So let's jump right into our presentation. This year, the employee handbook was updated. So you should have already received a copy of that in your route box, but we're going to go through some of the changes that were in the update of the handbook. So one of the updates was the attendance policy. In the handbook on page 9, it addresses missing shifts, and it also addresses if you are gone a certain amount of days. We also have implemented a new attendance policy this year. I handed out copies of these during the bid week. I have copies of them, and you also were required to sign a form stating that you understood the attendance policy. But just as a reminder, attendance is extremely important. Our students are counting on you, dispatch is counting on you. If you do need to call off sick, we ask that you call in starting at 5 a.m. and we'd like to have a 2-hour lead time so that we can get the routes covered. Understanding that some routes go out really, really early. So the earliest we start answering phones is 5 a.m. So you need to call and you need to talk to a person. Do not leave a voicemail. Do not send a text message. When dispatchers come in, they hit the ground running. And so they may not get to those voicemails or text messages until later in the day. By then, we've already been put into a bind, having to emergency cover routes. So you need to call and talk to a person. Also, it needs to be dispatch that you call, not Flo the recruiter, not me, not your trainer. You need to call dispatch. That main phone number is 208 229 8500. And you can just hit the 0 option when you hit that phone tree, the menu options, and that will take you straight to the dispatch line. Also, if you miss more than 3 days consecutively, maybe you have the flu, you got COVID, you sprained your ankle, you need a few days to rest, more than 3 days consecutively, you will need a doctor's note to return. Now, sometimes this is on a case-by-case basis. Really, the best thing you can do anytime you have any type of extended illness is remain in contact with me. You can text me. Most of you have my dial pad number. I have most of you in my dial pad. So you can text me and say, hey, just want to let you know I have a bad case of the measles. Okay, I'm going to completely understand why you are gone more than 3 days. We still may ask for a doctor's note upon your return, and a lot of times this is to make sure that whatever you were dealing with, injury, illness, whatever, that you are now medically cleared, you are safe to be driving a commercial motor vehicle. Also note in that attendance policy that if you miss more than 40% of your shifts in 1 month, so if we have 20 working days that month, that's 8 shifts that month, your route will go up for bid. Okay, this chronic absenteeism that we battle is ending. Okay, I try not to sound condescending or anything like that, but like I said, the district is counting on us to drive our routes. The students are counting on you to drive the bus. And consistency on a bus is so important for these students. Consistency with the rules, with the driver. They feel safe when they know who's going to be their driver. And so if we have chronic absenteeism, and this is just, like random call-offs, um, oh, I need a mental day, my cat died, my ferret's sick, you know, whatever it is, um, your route could go up for bid. Now, again, we're not cold-hearted people. We understand there are life situations that happen. And so if you have a situation such as you need to go on to a leave of absence, maybe you're having surgery and you need to have an extended recovery time, then you need to come in and talk to us. There is a process for that, or your leave may fall under FMLA, which is the Family Medical Leaves Act. All right, on page 20 of the employee handbook, they also have changed just a couple of words when they're referring to accidents. They've now substituted out the word crash for accident. Okay, so here is the definition of what a crash is. It's the same as an accident. It's a sequence of events involving a motor vehicle that result in a collision or non-collision, meaning there may have been contact, there may have not been contact, regardless of whether the events result in any damage, injury, or both. Okay. Also talks about a recordable accident or crash. Okay, recordable meaning you are at fault. You, the bus driver, are at fault. So for our record keeping purposes, that's called a recordable. Just because you are not ticketed in an accident, the police officers may not have issued you a ticket, doesn't mean that you're not at fault. Okay, we do our investigation, and you still could be found at fault for an accident. Okay, we look at pull the video, we look at all of the facts of the matter, and the question always is did our driver, did our operator do everything within their power to avoid the accident, or did their actions contribute to the accident? And if yes, your actions contributed, or you did not do everything you could to avoid the accident, then you could be found at fault. So just a quick few reminders about accidents. So our company policy is 3 recordable crashes or 3 recordable at-fault accidents in 36 months is a termination. This is a zero tolerance policy. Several of our drivers are starting out the school year with 2 recordable accidents. They would fall within that 36-month period. So I don't want anybody to have any accidents, but just keep that in mind. And personal tickets in your personal vehicle also play into this. So if you have 2 recordable accidents and then you get a speeding ticket in your personal vehicle, that falls in that 3 and 36 policy, and you could be terminated. And like I said, fault is determined by the safety manager and the team. Excuse me. Just because you didn't get a ticket doesn't mean that you're not at fault. All right, moving right along here. On page 23 and 24, it addresses the DVIR, or the Daily Vehicle Inspection Report. So we've talked a lot about the importance of this DVIR and completing it. This is company policy that you do a pre-trip and a post-trip report every time that bus goes out, and you are required to document it. Failure to comply with the pre-trip, to perform a pre-trip, to not do it correctly, or not documenting correctly, can result in corrective action up to and including termination. On page 27, it talks about the camera systems in the bus and the use of cruise control. So every bus has a camera system. Over the summer, we updated the camera system. So the old, you might have heard them called Xbox or the SD cards, those are all gone. They have all been updated to the very reliable Vulcan camera system. You see this picture right here. That is what it looks like in your bus. If you haven't seen this or you're not sure where it is, you need to locate this box. Okay, it's usually up in the driver's compartment. The 900s, you have to open that jockey box. It's behind the mirror. You have to pull the mirror down, open that up. It's in there, kind of buried amongst the quilt batting that's up there, the insulation. You need to see that there is a hard drive in here. Now, if you have the bracket up there, but it doesn't look like what you see in the picture here, it could mean that there's not a hard drive in that bus. You also will verify that the camera system is working by that little green light. Okay, for some folks, this is on the side of the panel to the driver's left, down by your knee, down by where the seatbelt cutter is. For some folks, it's right up on the panel with the switches. Look around, locate this, okay? When the camera system is working properly, this light is green. So you have your red center, that's your panic button. So if you have some sort of event that's happening and you want to timestamp that video so it's easier for whoever's watching the video to find it, you press that red button. But when the camera system is working properly, it is lit up green around that red button. So you're going to, when you come out to your bus and you turn it on to do your pre-trip, it will not light up immediately. It doesn't light up, the camera system doesn't kick on until the battery voltage is above 12. So once that battery voltage comes up, that camera system is going to come on and you should have the green light. If the light is flashing red or a solid red or not on at all, you need to contact shop because a non-working camera system can be an out of service thing. Sorry, I lost my word there. This past school year, we had a driver that had an accident going around a corner who released students before management was present. And so I was going to pull the video to look and see who all the kids were on the bus because the driver could not remember who all the students were. and who had gotten off of the bus. When I got on scene and looked at her camera system, the hard drive was not there. The driver did not know how to inspect the camera system, didn't know what they were looking for, did not know what that red dot and green around it meant. They had been marking on the DVIR that the camera system was operational. By legal standards, that's falsification of documents because the camera system actually was not working. Okay, so having an operational camera system, it protects you, the driver, in the event of student management issues. It protects the students. We use it for accident verification. We've even had instances where one student physically assaulted another student, and we have that on video to assist with the conviction. So these camera systems are very, very important. They're a required part of your pre-trip, and they must be documented. Also, when it comes to cruise control, never use cruise control with students on board. Now, I'm talking about regular routes here in town. There's no reason to be using cruise control anyway when you're driving around town, even if you're on the interstate, because typically when our buses are on the interstate, traffic is heavy. Okay, so you don't need to be putting on the cruise control. You need to be able to get that bus slowed down very quickly. Okay, so my long haul trip drivers, where you're going to Rexburg, to Mountain Home, something like that, come talk to me about that. Otherwise, we never use cruise control with students on board. So now we're going to do a review of STA's drug and alcohol policy. So drivers, you are all subject to federal regulations regarding drug and alcohol testing and usage. STA has pretty much adopted the federal guidelines for all of its employees. Now, the difference between the drivers and the monitors or somebody who doesn't have a CDL is you are not reported to the federal clearinghouse. Anybody who holds a commercial driver's license, doesn't matter the class or what the endorsements are you have on it, your name is in with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They maintain a clearinghouse, or basically a list, of anybody who has ever refused to do a drug test, failed a drug test, or has gone through the substance abuse professional process to clear their name of maybe having a positive drug screen or whatever. Um, so monitors and non-driving folks who do not have a CDL, you don't have to deal with the clearinghouse. Drivers, that is something that you do. So if you've been here for more than a couple of years, we've already entered you into the clearinghouse. Anybody who's a new employee, you know that one of the first things you do when you're in classroom is Teri will say you need to register for the FMCSA clearinghouse. So every commercial motor vehicle driver has been entered into the clearinghouse. So we're going to talk about the different kinds of testing that we do, and I'm going to explain a little bit about each of those. So every employee is subject to pre-employment testing. So you all passed. Good job. You're here. You passed your pre-employment testing. You are subject to random testing, reasonable suspicion, post-injury, and then drivers, you are subject to the post-accident testing. And I'm going to explain each of these as we go through. So we're not going to talk about pre-employment because, like I said, you've all passed. You're already all here. So let's talk about the random drug screens. So if you've been here any length of time, you've probably had at least one random drug test. Some of you a lot more than others. Some of you get hit in every quarter, every year. Some of you maybe once a year. Sometimes you can go years without being hit up for a random drug screen. I do not pick the randoms. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense to get mad at me when you get called for a drug test. We use a system called HireRight, and they take all of the employees that are on our employee roster and they randomize it and their names get pulled. Sometimes your name gets pulled just for a urine test, sometimes, which is the drug test. Sometimes you get pulled for the alcohol and the drug test. The alcohol test is when you report to the testing facility, you do essentially a breathalyzer. They have you blow into a machine, and then you do your urine specimen collection. Now, there are a lot of guidelines about random drug testing that I follow. So I cannot give you advanced warning. Okay. Now, if you've got a note on your hook in the morning, it's probably a 50-50 chance that it could be for a random drug test. Maybe, maybe not. I can't give you advance notice, okay? I hear that all the time. If you just told me I just went to the bathroom. Well, if you got a note on your hook in the morning, maybe come check with me before you go to the bathroom, okay? Like I said, it's picked by the computer. I have nothing to do with it. Maybe you've been a little salty with me lately, and then all of a sudden you get a drug test. I don't do that, okay? Or maybe you had an injury or something like that, and then 4 or 5 days later you're sent for a random drug test. It's completely random, okay? When you are notified of that random drug test, when you come into my office and I say, okay, you get to go do a drug test, and I slap the paperwork down in front of you, at that moment, you have to cease all safety sensitive functions, meaning you are not on a bus with children. You're not operating a company vehicle, whether it's a bus, a van, a lawnmower, whatever it is. You have to cease all safety sensitive functions, and you need to report for the test, okay? Now, we do pay you for your testing time. So from the time you leave here till the time that you have completed your collection at the testing facility and leave, you are paid for that chunk of time. And we do time. So we know when you left here, because I put the time, when I have you sign that piece of paper that you're doing a drug test, I put the time on it that I gave you. And then when we get the chain of custody form back from the drug testing facility, there's a timestamp on it for when they called you in. That has to be a reasonable amount of time. If we're seeing a 3, 4, 5, 3-day difference, which that would not happen, then it now calls into question why didn't you report for your drug test in a timely manner? Okay. Once you're at the testing facility, you have 3 hours from the time they call you back and start the process to complete your collection. So, like, if you went to the bathroom before I talked to you, shy bladder, you just can't pee on demand, you have 3 hours. They'll give you water. You have to stay there while that's done. If you leave the testing facility, that's a refusal to test, which is the same thing as a positive drug test, and you are terminated. Okay. And so if you're ever there and you're having trouble, give me a call. Let me know what's going on. If you have a midday route, we'll get it covered. And anybody who has a midday route, if I send you for a drug test, I always go into dispatch. Say, hey, I sent Billy Bob Jones for his drug test. He has a midday. So they'll have people on standby to cover that in case something happens, okay? And you're not going to be penalized for missing your midday because you are doing your drug screen. You are required to do those drug screens. It's a condition of your employment. And so we're not going to penalize you if something is going on at the drug testing facility and you need to stay there longer. Like I said, refusal to test is the same thing as a positive test. Leaving before, or let's start out with, you come in my office and I give you the test and you're like, no, I'm not doing that. Refusal to test. I can't do that today. Quite frankly, it's not my problem. Okay. This is a condition of your employment. Now, I try to be sensitive to these things. Okay. Especially like those of you who have middays. If I know it's a preschool midday, I'll usually wait till Friday, so that I know that we're not going to be running up into your midday. But I don't know your personal schedule. I don't know your personal life. I don't want to know those things. Okay. But if you refuse when I try to hand you that paperwork, then you're immediately placed on suspension pending termination. Okay. Like I said, leaving the clinic before the collection's complete is also a refusal to test. Now, if you do the test and I get notification back from the MRO, which is the medical review officer, that you have a positive drug screen, you also will be terminated. Our company has adopted a zero tolerance policy for drug and alcohol usage, or I shouldn't say drug and alcohol usage, for if you have a drug test or an alcohol test that tests positive while you're on duty. That is a zero tolerance and you will be terminated. Some of you may take certain prescriptions that require clarification. You will not give that clarification to me. You do not give that clarification to the person that collects your specimen. The only person that can go through is the medical review officer. So what happens is, like, say, a big one that I see is Adderall. If someone is taking Adderall, it will show up on the drug screen. What happens is that is then sent to the medical review officer. It's a medical doctor, and they will attempt to contact you, and they'll usually call you. They may try to email you. They always call. If they can't get a hold of you, then they call me and they email me and say, we need to hear from this donor regarding their drug screen. And once they get a hold of you, then they need to know where was the prescription filled. They'll ask for the prescription number, the prescribing doctor. They may need to see a note from your doctor regarding it, or you may have to bring a letter to me from your prescribing doctor about the medication that you're taking, and the doctor has to say this does not impair this person's ability to perform safety sensitive functions or to operate a commercial motor vehicle. Okay, it happens. I took a medication a few years ago that was the same way, and I let my doctor know ahead of time that I'm a school bus driver. I'm subject to FMCSA regulations. I had a letter ready to go. And then as soon as I was done with the medication and, had a certain amount of time for it to clear my system, then, whatever, I was prepared for it. So that is kind of random drug testing in a nutshell. This next video is about CBD products, okay, and their usage. Now, listen closely, okay? CBD use is not regulated in the United States. It is a derivative of the marijuana plant, and don't come in and give me a big lecture on all of it. I don't want to hear it, okay? I'm just going to tell you right now, I understand the medicinal uses, but there is no regulation on these people that manufacture these products. They could put any amount of THC, whatever the oil that has the THC in it, say whatever its percentage it is. They could say it's THC free. So THC free is a tricky phrase. It's kind of like alcohol free. If you ever had like near beer or alcohol free wine, it actually has a very small percentage of alcohol in it. It's the same thing with these CBD products. They can say it's THC free, but it very well could still have a very small percentage of THC in it. And taken enough over time, it will build up in your system because THC stays in the system for 30 days or more, depending upon your body fat percentage and those things, and you could test positive. So pay attention to this next video, please.
Cheryl, CBD products are legal but mostly unregulated and may be hazardous to your occupational health. CBD busted. Tonight, the I-Team with a warning from the Illinois Secretary of State and from a suburban school bus driver caught up in the policy of zero tolerance.
It took a long time to talk about it.
Missy Barton still gets emotional more than a year after she was suspended from her school bus driving job in West Kane County. For 13 years, she had been picking up the children of friends and neighbors in District 301.
Next to being a wife and a mom, it was the next best job I can have.
A job that came to an abrupt end in June of 2018 when she flunked her company drug test, a screening she had scheduled as part of her mandated bus license renewal.
The doctor had called. He said that it was positive drug screening. And I was puzzled. I said, "Are you calling for Melissa Barton?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "For THC marijuana." I said, "I don't do anything." I said, "I don't even know. I don't even know."
Barton says she doesn't drink or smoke and has never used illegal drugs, but had taken these hemp oil capsules for back pain relief that apparently left trace amounts of THC in her system.
I could not understand how this had happened.
Here's how. THC is found in both cannabis plants, hemp and marijuana. CBD taken from hemp should be 0.3% or less of THC, the psychoactive chemical that causes a mind-altering effect. A legal amount, but not permitted for certain employees, including those who drive big rigs and school buses. Drug screenings don't reveal what product you use, only that you have THC in your system.
Right now, it's a 3-year suspension of my school bus permit.
If they fail, they fail.
The Illinois Secretary of State enforces federal guidelines and state laws for most over-the-road truckers and bus drivers. They are heavily regulated industries. Illinois goes a step further, requiring annual permit renewals for school bus drivers, including a drug screen.
We want to keep the zero tolerance intact. We really do, because it's precious cargo. We're hauling kids back and forth to school.
The head of Illinois' commercial driver's license program was adamant, telling the I-Team, despite the legalization of recreational marijuana and the proliferation of CBD products, concerns of impairment remain in these safety-sensitive jobs, and there are no plans to loosen current regulations.
I don't think we want to start giving just a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there.
State data provided to the I-Team shows only a handful of drivers appeal their suspensions each year, and of those who do, very few are reinstated. Officials with the office say they had not heard of the CBD and THC dilemma until we brought it to their attention. They say Barton's case is the only one so far on record.
Whether it be CBD oil, if they do claim it has THC in it or not, it's still zero tolerance on anything.
Barton understands the need to keep children safe, but she also wants the state to know there are cases like hers. This binder holds all of the paperwork, including the 2 drug tests Barton did on her own, showing no signs of THC. It's also full of letters of support from her employers, neighbors, and her children.
My mom would never do anything like that.
Also in the binder, her lost bid to have her license reinstated. Barton won't be able to drive a school bus again until 2021.
I don't want nobody else to go through what I went through. I want to help somebody else not get into a predicament where I am.
The hemp oil company told administrative hearing members the product should not have caused her to test positive for THC and that their product contains no more than 2% THC per pill.
So along with random testing, all of our employees also are subject to what we call reasonable suspicion. So reasonable suspicion is if you appear to be somehow under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and we have a reasonable suspicion based upon certain evidences that you are impaired. So all of our dispatchers, all of our staff, and all of our trainers, anybody who hands out a key has gone through specific training called reasonable suspicion training in how to identify someone who is impaired, and those people can send you for a reasonable suspicion drug test. So when you come up to get your keys in the morning or the afternoon, monitors when you come to the key desk to check in, the dispatcher or staff member, whoever it is handing out keys, they're looking at you. They need to see your eyes. Okay, so don't be coming up there with your sunglasses on. We're going to ask you to remove them. They're looking at your eyes. Are they bloodshot? Are they red rimmed? Is there an odor? Okay, a strong odor of alcohol or marijuana. Is the person talking appropriately? Are they slurring their speech? Talking nonsense, gibberish. We observe the way you walk. Okay, so we're also looking, do you have your safety vest? Do you have the correct shoes on? So there's a lot of things that they're looking for. If there is reasonable suspicion that a person is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, they are immediately removed from duty. Okay, and they are sent to actually transported. We take the safety van, put the person in the safety van, take them over to the testing facility right then and there for a test, and then that person is on suspension until we get the results of the test. Now, if the test comes back negative, we were wrong. That's a happy day for us. Okay, having to go through reasonable suspicion with anybody is awful for the person, for the staff member. It's very uncomfortable. Now, anybody who's a driver and a monitor, if you see something that is suspicious, drivers, maybe you have a monitor on the bus with you, and there's an odor of alcohol. I mean, there's just, your spidey senses are tingling. You can notify us. Do it discreetly, okay? Don't call it out over the radio. I think my monitor's drunk. Don't be a jerk about it, okay? So notify dispatch discreetly, and we will get the monitor removed from the bus, or any employee. Any employee, notify us discreetly, and we're going to be very discreet in how this is handled. So, like I said, once you're transported to the testing facility. Once we get the results back, if they're negative, you return to duty. You're paid for the days that you missed for the suspension. All's well and good. If the tests come back positive for drugs or alcohol, it's immediate termination. And for drivers who are on the FMCSA clearinghouse, that is entered, the MRO enters that into the clearinghouse that you have failed a drug test. Anybody who hires CDL drivers by law has to put your name into that clearinghouse. And if they see that you have tested positive or refused to test and have not completed the SAP or the substance abuse professional process, they won't hire you. Okay. There is a process to get your name cleared from the FMCSA clearinghouse. It's very long, it's very expensive, and it involves observed collection of specimens, meaning someone stands there and watches you give your specimen. Okay, so the best thing you can do is to avoid drugs and alcohol. And some of you, I know you partake of alcohol, and that is your personal choice. But many of you have told me how you are smart about it. You don't, many people don't drink during the week because they subject to the testing. All the drinking is done on the weekend, and then they stop before a certain time so that their body has time to process all of that out. If you want a glass of wine with dinner, that's your choice. Just understand the more that you drink, depending upon your body limit, that could carry over into the morning. If you're drinking, 2, 3 bottles of wine at night, you very well still could be legally drunk when you report to work the next morning. So use your common sense. Okay. Yeah, I doubt anybody here, wants to go through this process. Like I said, it's long, it's humiliating. And so the best thing to do is just to avoid any situation where you could be called for a reasonable suspicion drug test in the first place. So other types of drug tests that all employees are subject to is post-injury. So this is if you are injured here on company property on company time. This is not you fell down the stairs at home and you come in with a twisted ankle. No, what happens on your time is your time. If you are injured here on the property during work hours, then when you have to seek medical treatment, you could be tested for drugs and alcohol. That is up to our discretion, also the discretion of the treating physician if they have, again, reasonable suspicion as to why you tripped and fell out in the yard. And then drivers, this is the one that only applies to you. This does not apply to monitors. This does apply to the van drivers, okay, post-accident. But there are some very specific guidelines that fall under post-accident testing. So if there's a bus accident, first of all, was there a fatality? That's an automatic drug and alcohol test after the accident. Were you the driver cited, meaning were you found at fault by a law enforcement officer? Was the bus disabled, could not be driven, and had to be towed away? And were there any injuries, whether you, your passengers, the other vehicle, or their passengers? So you have to meet 2 of those qualifications. Unless it's a fatality, that's an immediate drug and alcohol post-accident test. All right, so let's do a quick review of our cell phone and electronic use policy. So every employee during your hiring process, this usually happens through your classroom instruction, signs the STA cell phone and electronic device policy. And we're going to review it here. So when can you use your cell phone? Drivers, and this applies to monitors too. Monitors, if the driver cannot use their cell phone, you cannot be on your cell phone. We'll talk about one tiny exception that may no longer exist. Okay, so when can you use the cell phone? Bus is empty, there's no students on board. The bus is secured, meaning it's parked, bus in neutral, park brake set, and you are out of the driver's seat. Okay, quite frankly, I wouldn't even be standing in the driver compartment. Go stand in the student compartment, sit in a student seat, step off of the bus, but never in the driver's seat. Okay. Yeah. All right. If there's an emergency and you cannot reach dispatch, now if you can, get pulled over to the side of the road, secure the bus, then call. If you've been in an accident and you can't get through, just make the call. Okay. But those are very extreme cases. Okay. And if we catch you on your cell phone, you're like, oh, it was an emergency, I couldn't reach dispatch. I know what's going on. I know when there's accidents. I know when dispatch is super busy. Got a radio in my office now. And so that may not necessarily be a valid excuse. So, but if it really is an emergency, you can't reach, sometimes maybe the bus breaks down and all your electrical's gone. Well, secure your bus. I mean, you're already dead in the water. Secure your bus, get out of the driver's seat, and call into dispatch. While you're driving, that phone either needs to be off or in silent mode with no notifications coming through. So the phone should not be vibrating. Maybe many of you wear, like I do, Apple Watch or some type of smart device that is connected to your phone. You need to shut off the Bluetooth on that. Now, I do understand some of us wear continuous glucose monitors, the little thing on your arm, and then your phone tells you your blood sugar. And I know that if you turn your Bluetooth off, that it yells at you. And it will constantly, and those alarms will go off even when your phone's on silent or on airplane mode. That's because it's for help, okay? So if you have a CGM, I understand you're not going to be able to turn your Bluetooth off, but that doesn't mean that you can now be getting text messages and making phone calls on your phone just because you have a CGM. Okay. Some of you wear hearing aids that are also Bluetooth connected to the phone, and you can take phone calls through the hearing aids. That needs to be disabled while the bus is in operation. Okay. Yeah. And if you ever have questions about this, you can always come to me as well. So I always seem to get a question from the special needs drivers and monitors. The driver says, what if I need directions? Can my monitor use the GPS on their phone? Yes, they can. Okay. But they cannot stick it in your face for you to see the directions. They need to speak those directions to you. Now, you also may be saying, well, you just put an electronic device on my bus, the tablet. What about that? So those of you who've been driving by now know that when the bus is in motion, the tablet locks out. You get a black screen that has the time, and it will have your turn-by-turn direction. It'll have your next turn directions on there, and it talks to you as well. While you're moving, you're not able to interact with that tablet device. You need to be stopped. Okay, so my preference, I'm going to tell you, you need to be the bus secured. So you need to be like pulled over to the side of the road, bus in neutral, park brake, all that kind of thing before you are interacting with that tablet. So in your packet is the electronic device policy. You need to sign and date that as well. Read through it, okay? If you violate this policy, this also is a zero tolerance policy, and you will be terminated, okay? There's a saying, and I have it up here, ignorance of the law is no excuse, okay? You need to know what you are subject to as an employee. When you sign that handbook agreement, which that is also in your pocket, everybody got the new handbook in their route boxes. If you didn't get one, let Teri Marinos know. She has lots and lots of copies of those. When you sign it, you are saying, I agree to what's in this handbook. I agree to abide by the policies of this company. Okay, so please sign that, and I will get that from don't tear your packet apart. Keep your packet all together. Once you've finished all these videos, that packet with your quizzes will get turned into me. So please keep all of that together.
To invite you to join me in what I believe we can do to impact chaos. And I believe that together, if we're willing to step into the chaos, we can actually bring about change in the lives of those that are affected by the chaos. Several years ago, 1988 to be exact, I came with an encounter to what I thought was a new type of chaos in my life. It was the year I married my wife, and 3 weeks after our honeymoon, when we returned back home, I started driving her school bus. Now, in case you're just wondering, she was not a student on my bus. Let me make that very clear. She owned the bus company. So, as a job, I started driving her school bus while working some other jobs in college. And during this time, I discovered that driving a school bus was really a lot of chaos. People ask me all the time, what was it like to drive a school bus? And I explain it this way. Imagine yourself the only reasonable adult stranded on an island with 66 other people. Some of them juvenile offenders and the others scared of their shadow. That's what it was like every day for 10 years that I drove a bus. I'll never forget that those students that rode my bus, many of them, most of them, were trapped in the middle to lower class part of society, and the majority of those were very poor. This was new for me because I had never rode a school bus much, so to drive a school bus was very different. You see, I believe that you and I can impact chaos in three ways. Number one, when we serve others. He had a name. They called him Marlin. I called him the kid from hell. You want to know why? Because I was sure that's where he came from and was confident that's where he was going. For a year and a half, when he was in the ninth grade, you got it? Marlin was the number one contributor to the chaos on bus number 9. He had this little game that he would play often, and he would come on the bus and he would take paper wads. And so if you've ever done this to a bus driver, you should apologize when you leave this room. But he took these paper wads and he would begin to throw those from the back of the bus, and they would come as close to as good to the front, but would never make it past about the middle row. Well, Marlin wasn't content with that, and the more order I tried to bring to the chaos, or in fact, the more control I tried to bring to Marlin, the more difficult he became. So he brought racquetballs on the bus, and I'll never forget it. He began to throw these racquetballs from the back of the bus, and they would continue to fly past the middle row, and on occasions, they would hurl right past my head and hit the windshield. You know, being the number one, super sensitive, caring adult on the island I was trapped on that bus, I was a little patient with Marlin a couple of times. And then whenever one of those whizzed by my head and hit the windshield, I realized I got to do something. So immediately I slammed on my brakes, put the bus in park, turned around, and walked with my best Barney Fife pose to the back of the bus. Marlin, aware of my frustration at the time, got up, opened the back door of the bus, jumped out into the street, to which I met him with this remark: "Hey, I'm finished with you, man. I'm kicking you off the bus." Marlin offered some gestures that I will not give to you tonight, and some vocabulary that is not common for me. And when I took the students to the school, I went to the principal's office, and it was over. He was suspended 3 weeks. I won the battle. The 3 weeks that Marlin was not on the bus, I thought about him. You see, I remember that Marlin's chaos was different than most people. His mom was absent from the home. His dad lost a leg in a crash when he was young. So before Marlin could get on the school bus to go to school with the other kids, he had to take care of his dad, who was crippled, and at that point an alcoholic. And then Marlin would get on the bus and try to cope and go back and repeat one time after another. So I decided we've got to do something. So I contacted a university friend of mine that was across the tracks from where my bus route was, and we pitched this idea, and we decided we would just bring these college students across the tracks to tutor these kids. And they started, and it was great, and it was awesome. And Marlin finished the school or graduated from school, and I'll never forget it. We lost contact, and about 15 years later, I'm sitting at the university where I work in my office, and a Coca-Cola truck pulls up beside my window. And guess who got out of the Coca-Cola truck? Marlin, the kid from hell. I thought, who did Marlin steal a Coca-Cola truck from? He had the keys, he put the drinks on the two-wheeler, and he wheeled them around to the front of the building, and I ran out of my office, and I met him at the front door, and I looked at him, and I said, "Marlin," and he said, "Will." We were mesmerized by the moment of a re-encounter over about 15 years that we had not seen each other. And I said to Marlin, "What are you doing?" To which he said, "I'm delivering Cokes, Will." And then he said, "Hey, Will," and that tone caused me to pause. And I looked at him, and he said, "Thank you for them tutors. I made it. I got a job. I'm married. I got a house." 13 years with Coca-Cola at the time. Talked to Marlin a couple of days ago. He's up for a promotion now. Number two, we can impact chaos if we will simply empower others to dream. For Danny, a baseball glove was enough. I got a favorite chicken place that I go to about 10:30 in the morning because the chicken is freshest at that time of day, because it's after breakfast and in between lunch, and they're forced to cook it for you because they're open. And I go in there and I take my papers and I'm going to grade my papers, and I'm excited about it because it's me and gravy and chicken. It's a Southern thing, and it's a great place to do my work. I'm nestling in to study or to do my grading, and all of a sudden my alarm goes off on my phone, and it reminds me of a funeral visitation that I'm supposed to be at. I don't like funerals for number one. Number two, I didn't even know the deceased lady. And number three, I felt compelled to go simply because my friend was the son-in-law. I go to the funeral visitation. I'm standing in the lobby. This kid walks up to me, a little older than a kid, and he looks at me and he said, "Did you used to drive a school bus?" This was about 6 months ago, and I looked at him and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Is your name Will?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm Danny." And he told me his last name. He said, 30 years ago, you gave me a baseball glove on the bus, and I just wanted to tell you, it changed my life. We went in, did our respects, came out. I said, "Danny, can we meet later next week?" He said, "Yeah." So we met at an ice cream stop the next week, and I walk in, and Danny's already there, and I was going to buy his ice cream, and he finished his ice cream before I got there, and he had a shadow box on the table. You know what a shadow box is? It's what your mama or your grandmama put stuff in that really may not matter to anyone, and they hang it on the wall. He laid the shadow box down, took the back off of it, took the glove out, held the glove in his hand. I wanted to touch the glove. He began to tell me the story. On the bus when I was in the 5th grade, we talked about baseball. I'm not sure you even knew about baseball, but you seemed to care about me. So when we talked about baseball, I'll never forget it. I said to you, "I'm going to play baseball." You said, "What position?" I said, "I'm going to play shortstop." And you said, "No, you're not a shortstop. Play second base." He said, "Well, I played second base, and then I began to coach after I finished high school." And he said, "I'll never forget the day you gave me the glove, Will." He said, "I was getting off the bus, and I was standing at the bottom of the steps, and you had said, 'Hey, Danny, wait.' And it was the last day of school, and you looked at me, and you looked down, and you pulled an old glove out, this one, from a box beside your seat, and you tossed it to me in the stairwell. You said, 'Hey, Danny, I believe in you. Do good.'" Danny said, "For 14 years, I take this baseball glove to the field at every team I coach, and I say to my players, 'I believe in you.' And I tell them the story of my bus driver giving me a baseball glove 30 years earlier, at that time, whatever year it was. And he said, I say to them, 'I believe in you. Now let's play baseball.'" You see, I'm convinced that we can impact chaos if we will simply help others dream. Number 3, I'm convinced we can impact chaos if we help others know that they matter. About 2.5 months ago, I was at a family wedding. The wedding was great, and the reception was good, and I was standing there waiting to get some food, and this girl walks up to me, a lady now, and she said to me, she said, "Is your name Will?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You used to drive my school bus 29 years ago. I looked puzzled. I didn't remember who she was. She said, "You don't remember me?" I said, "I'm so sorry." She said, "It's okay, I remember you." She said, "Every day I would get on your school bus, and every afternoon when I would get off of your school bus, I'll never forget it, you would look at me and you would look at everybody else on the bus, and you would say something nice to us, and you would encourage us that we were important and that we mattered. I'm a mom now," she said, "and every time I take my kids to school, before that door opens, I do for them what you did for me."